What up, everybody? Welcome back to Cafecito and Canes. You probably recognize the gentleman to my, which way is it? To my left, and the dude below me from ROC Boys Football. Please, everyone, give it up for Jay and Dylan. I wish I had like an applause sound effects, but I don't, so we'll fake it. Yes, Jay and Dylan, how are you guys?
Good. Appreciate you having us on. Any chance we get a chance to talk some Miami Hurricanes football, we're taking it up.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you guys, to be clear, you guys aren't necessarily Hurricane fans. It's just you cover multiple teams, right? But Miami is one of the ones you guys cover, so you've kind of become popular amongst Hurricanes fans, YouTubers and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Fire Hurricane. I think you meant love the ROC Boys. You guys truly decimate things and so quickly in a shorter time. Yeah, it is really impressive how quickly you guys get stuff out. I mean, yeah, like whenever there's I'm sure today, Keontre Scott, I'm sure you had stuff ready. I don't know if you might have dropped something already leading up to the show.
Yeah, we just at home all day breaking it down as it comes in, or try to be at least.
That's dedication, man. Hey, John, ROC Boys, very happy I was able to set this up. Yes, thank you, Greg. Yeah. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate for making the connection. So, So, like I said, we just had a commit, an hour ago. I don't know if this is going to be the last pickup portal wise for Miami. We'll probably, there are grad transfers that can still hit the portal. Obviously, they still want to address linebacker, I think, but. Talk to me. I'll start with you, Jay. How do you guys feel about this Keontre Scott pickup?
Yeah, Keontre Scott, we think can play. Dill, we both have watched a lot of Keontre Scott going back to his days at Auburn. I think the thing to know with Keontre Scott is in 2023, he played nickel and was a dang good nickel for the Auburn Tigers. And then in 2024, he bounces out to the boundary cornerback spot. Doesn't go as well. Dill, I know you'll probably double down on this. Like, I feel like everybody just sold their stock on this kid. Like 18 months ago after the 2023 year, we were talking about this kid potentially going to the NFL draft. And now he's coming to Miami, obviously at a position of concern, of need. Dill, I think we're both pretty dang big fans of Keontre Scott.
As a pure nickel, it's like you felt like Miami needed it. I think, again, they get Jacoby Thomas, try to address that safety spot. I think, again, Keontre Scott, you go back to the film when he was playing nickel, he was awesome. 2023 year, super disruptive, made a lot of plays, was really good in the run. So I think that's a huge one. And again, a guy who they phased him out in 24 by kicking him out to the boundary. I'll never understand it because it's not like they needed boundary cornerbacks. They had good young players at Auburn. I don't get why he was playing out there, but.
Yeah, no, I really like the pickup, and I like that, since we didn't get AJ Halsey, obviously that was the one guy we really wanted. That was the prized, possible recruit out there. But, you can't get much better as a consolation prize than these two guys, talking about Scott and also
Jacoby Thomas.
Jacoby Thomas from Tennessee. Like them both, very similar. It seems like Mario's going after really physical guys in the secondary.
Yeah.
So tell me, I'll start with you, Dylan, this time. How do you feel about the improvements they made in the secondary? Because probably watching Canes football over the last year, you saw what we saw as fans. The secondary was the downfall of the team. How do you feel about it now?
And honestly, the coaching staff might be the bigger one because it's just their inability to get guys playing at a decent level, and there was no improvement last year. I think, they certainly retooled with the players. Like Ethan O'Connor, certainly one that comes to mind, like getting one of the premier boundary corners in the class and then everyone else they got. But I think the bigger thing is they have a coach or a defensive coordinator, I should say, that had that Minnesota team playing at a really high level in the back end. They just didn't make a ton of mistakes. Now, they play a lot of zone coverage, I feel like, but they play it at a high level and they don't mess up a lot. And Miami was like the polar opposite. They were making mistakes constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think you get Dill. I would shout at Xavier Lucas too. Xavier Lucas coming from Wisconsin. I think we could be talking about him being a first-round NFL draft pick in 2 years. He checks all the athletic profiles you want. I kind of agree, and I don't know what went on with Lance Guidry last year. The thing just fell apart. Now, I think the personnel was probably not good enough. I think we knew it wasn't good enough going into 2024. Like the big question mark was, hey, are we good enough in the secondary? You figured out real damn quick that you weren't. And then it just felt like we were just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it would stick. And it seemed like, and Dill, kind of what you said, like week after week, it seemed like it was just getting worse and worse. And I think that's very fair to look at the coaching staff and saying, well, we shouldn't be getting worse week after week. And that's kind of what was going on with the Miami Hurricanes, kind of culminating in just what cost you a college football playoff berth with a disaster against Syracuse late November.
Mm-hmm. If you look at the tape those last couple of weeks, whenever they would send someone in motion, we would freak out. We would be lost. Everyone's pointing at each other. It was a disaster. It wasn't that against Florida. So somewhere along the way, I do know, spoke to some people, there was a big communication issue.
Yes.
That's pretty apparent.
Yeah.
That's not a shocker. So.
And I don't consider myself an X's and O's genius, but it doesn't take a genius to watch that defense in November look at themselves just yelling at each other as somebody goes in motion, figure out well, we don't really know what we're doing out here on the football field. Yeah.
And that's something, watching tape on some of our new acquisitions, like Jacoby Thomas, for example, watching his tape against Bama last year. I'm like, somebody goes in motion and I'm like, oh, they switched and they didn't start arguing. This is great.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And that is one of the big thing is they have a lot of guys who've played a lot. And even some of the younger guys, Ethan O'Connor, a younger guy, but he's played a ton. So everybody, for the most part, aside from maybe Xavier Lucas, who they're bringing up, a lot of guys who have played. Brantley's played a lot. Again, even last year, it was not a ton of proven production. And the one guy who really popped was OJ Frederick. I thought he was awesome for the whole year. So, again, you kind of got him back. So, I do think you're also, again, certainly going to get upgraded at coaching staff because I don't know how you could be any worse. And then you have a lot of guys who played a lot of ball.
Absolutely. So, after these two, portal windows that passed, the one after the season ended and then the spring window. So, looking back, including – getting Carson back and, all these guys, how do you feel about the roster now compared to 2024? Do you guys feel that Miami took a step towards that ACC title, maybe a big step? Could they be on the cusp of finally getting it done? Or do you still feel nervous about certain areas? Whoever wants to jump in.
I'll take it first. They're certainly in contention. They had the roster to win the ACC last year, in my opinion, too. Things just kind of fell apart in the secondary late. I think you did. I think one of the things I appreciate most about Mario Cristobal is he's not going to get complacent. He's going to look at this roster and say, all right, what are the positions we need to get right? We're going to go try to get right in the offseason through the portal. Now, I'm a big fan of Carson Beck. Dill, you remember 12 months ago, I was up here saying Carson Beck's the number one quarterback in the country going into 2024. Now, that didn't really play out for Georgia in the 2024 year. I can't believe – now, I get the concern about Carson Beck coming back from the injury. So many people are, writing off Carson Beck like he didn't ball out in 2023, and then you look at what went on with Georgia last year. One, the wide receivers couldn't catch a cold. They really struggled on the outside. Secondly, we always assume Georgia can run the football. Last year, they were outside the top 80 in yards per carry on the ground. That's something that's important to Carson Beck. Right when Carson Beck committed to Miami, the thing I loved most was and I'm interested to hear, I might ask you about the wide receiver room in a second from your point of view. But one of the things I loved about the Carson Beck edition was you're going to have a damn good run game for Miami in 2025. And he's something that he loves working play action. You give him a good run game, I think he's going to get back to the quarterback we saw in 2023. If you get that version of Carson Beck, 100%, the ACC championship is certainly on the table for this Miami Hurricanes team.
And you are right. They've had the team to do it. Now, again, can they play a cleaner year of football? They've 2 straight years kind of where you see real heartbreaking errors that are just again, you'd certainly like to see them not be the case again. But again, it's pretty much them and Clemson. I don't really see this as anybody else even relevant in the ACC picture. Now, Clemson's bringing back a squad, so Clemson's really good, but I don't really see anyone else in contention truly for that ACC title besides those two.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned heartbreaking losses. I'm a season ticket holder, so I was at the Georgia Tech game
Okay.
I don't even need to say anything more. You know what Georgia Tech game I'm talking about, where we didn't take a knee and where Don Chaney didn't fumble, but they're saying he did. And then they hit a Hail Mary. I was there. Just knife stab to the heart after stab to the heart. Like, it was terrible. And then, of course, the unraveling at the end of last year's. But, there have been some good moments. We're on an upward trajectory overall, which is all you can ask.
It's a legit, you look at the physicality on both sides of the ball, the offensive line especially, I think is one of the best in the country, and it's been one of the best in the country for the last couple of years. They recruit the position well, they develop well. It's again, that's where it starts. So many teams, obviously, I feel like struggling to play good offensive line football. Even you look at a team like Georgia playing really poorly last year. Miami does have that. So that's one thing that is really hard to build, it feels like right now. Miami's got it. I think the defensive line, to me, underplayed probably last year. I think most people would think. I thought that was a really loaded unit. I love the young talent coming up. Justin Scott, that type of guy needs to be dominant, I think, for this Miami team, because that's probably the one question I sort of have is who's going to be the game wreckers in the middle.
Yeah. From a fan standpoint, I can tell you we are very excited about the D-line. Very, very excited. Excited about Hayden Lowe. Excited, Ruben Bates. Ruben Bain is shedding some weight to get back to his old DN role. You got Justin Scott, like you said. Ahmad Moten really came on late. He was a nice late bloomer.
Sure.
Yeah. And then to answer your question, Jay, about the wide receivers.
Yes.
Yeah. So all of us wanted that number one guy. We wanted a dude, The guy I wanted that the second he hit the portal, I'm go get him, was Ted Hurst from Georgia Southern. That was kind of out of our control, unfortunately, But aside from that, it's I think they did as well as they could with what was there, what was available. They were, working. They were kind of working the grad transfer market. No one really, no one really valuable hit.
Yeah.
From the grad transfers. That could still happen, but from
what
what
my
we did,
opinion was you weren't really able to get guys who are more talented than what's in the room. I don't. Yeah, again, they're young and they're unproven, but frankly, I look at the who's been able to make that work. Wide receivers, young guys with talent, have frankly been really, really good in college football for the last 2 years. I think they have enough talent. I get that it's not proven, but I just didn't see anybody in the spring portal, even Trevor Pena. I like Trevor Pena's game, but he's not overwhelmingly better than all these other, a guy like Ray Joseph or some of these other young guys.
I would have liked Trevor Pena in this Miami Hurricanes offense. I think that would have been just rolling it right through with Xavier Restrepo. Now, my take on the wide receiver, I totally agree with you with Ted Hurst. When he hit the portal, I was you knew Miami was going to be immediately in it. You saw them linked to him, and then he obviously goes back to Georgia State. I think a lot of programs across the country were disappointed with that decision. Trevor Pena, I would have liked it just because of an experience standpoint. We're just so young in that wide receiver room. This is at least my take in the wide receiver room is kind of like what you said. They did what they could. There wasn't that guy that you could have gone out and gotten. Now you got to trust the kids you've recruited out of high school. It's time for them to step up. The JoJo Traders or true freshmen like Malachi Toney. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what I think. That's probably one of, if not the biggest storyline for Miami going into 2025 now is, are we good enough at pass catcher?
Yeah, I liked the Tony Johnson pickup because
me too.
Shannon Dawson's offense needs a reliable go-to slot receiver. Like when he had Tank Dell, then Xavier Restrepo, he needs that reliable pass catcher. Now, Malachi Toney may just take the job from him, even though he's only 17 years old. The dude is a dog, and has been since he was a freshman in high school. He's been that way. That dude's different. So I feel pretty good there. Joshua Moore, true freshman, but he's going to get snaps. That dude's traits are off the charts.
Yes.
And then getting CJ Daniels, if he can, I know he had a foot injury that he played through last year, and if he can kind of get his sea legs back and get back to that Liberty form from 2023, there's a few guys on this team that if they get back to the 2023 form, oh my God, we're going to be really good.
Yes.
CJ Daniels is one of those guys. And then people forget Elijah Lofton at tight end. We're really excited about him.
Yeah, no, we've talked a lot of Elijah Lofton too, and I feel like people forgot it because Elijah Arroyo was so good, so he didn't like Lofton didn't get a ton of opportunity. When you talk pass catchers, especially from a frame set of like Carson Beck, like having a legit tight end, the kind of ones that he had at Georgia, that's going to be big. And the CJ Daniels conversation, I think, interests me as well. Kind of like how we talked about Keontre Scott at the top, like really good in 2020. Like CJ Daniels at Liberty was another guy that was like, should he go to the NFL draft? Should he come back to school? He ends up going to LSU, like you said, dealt with some injuries there. What if CJ Daniels gets back to the form that he was in 2023? Like you said, you're looking at a legitimate wide receiver one, at least from what we saw from him in 2023 at Liberty.
For sure.
I'm also a Bauman fan, to be honest. I feel like people like act like Bauman is a nobody. I think Bauman's really good. You go back to the Tulane film, I think a good athlete at the tight end spot. I imagine they're going to play a fair amount of two tight ends because I think both can split out wide and get things done on the not on the boundary necessarily, but in that jumbo slot kind of role. So again, I was never as concerned. I didn't necessarily think it was like a desperate need in the transfer portal in the winter. I think it was always safety and linebacker to me were the two positions. I was like, well, I think they really like to add a couple of guys in that spot. But I'd always been okay trusting young talent in the wideout room. That's just kind of my stance on the whole thing.
Yeah. So, and Dylan, you just mentioned linebacker is one of the positions of need. If they're going to address any other position, like moving, like for the rest of the offseason for me, if you could get just one more, it would be linebacker, hands down.
It's got to be the Rutgers guy, right?
Mohamed Torre, get him, lock him in, love him.
That's another guy. If it's 2023 Mohamed Torre, oh my God.
Get a guy.
We're Big Ten guys. We're Michigan fans, so we've seen plenty of Mohamed Torre, and he is, especially like 2023, that's when he's playing with Corey Heatherman, who is his coach at Rutgers, coaching linebackers. Mohamed Torre is a dude, if he's healthy. But that's, I think, his second ACL that he's dealing with. So probably got to make sure the medicals are straight with him.
And that's probably what they're doing. I know Mario and then that staff, they do their due diligence when it comes to guys, when it comes to injuries. Like when they went out and got Carson Beck, I know they vetted him inside and out. Like when he announced that commitment, I was like, oh, his elbow's good. Like they're confident he's going to be fine. But that said, so was there anybody that they picked up that you thought, ooh, that's a sneaky good pickup that no one's talking enough about? Is there anybody that comes to mind?
I got one.
Mm-hmm.
Jamar Brown from North Dakota State, the running back. What nobody really talked about it because he's probably going to be running back 3 this year, right? Because you got 2 dogs in Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle. This kid can play. And what I loved about it is Miami clearly wanted to get a 3rd running back, right? Because I think you had Wheatley Humphrey and Gerard Pringle, like 2 guys that are young, haven't really played. And we know Miami's going to want to run the football, so you want fresh running backs. It was going to be hard to convince a running back to come into a room that has Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle. And they got probably the best one that was available in the spring, a guy that has 3 years of eligibility remaining. I couldn't have thought of a better kind of running back for Miami to bring in. And nobody really talked about it, like you were saying, because he was, probably going to be running back 3 this year. He's going to play this year, maybe not a ton, but over the next couple of years, I think he could be a dude for Miami.
Yeah,
I'd have probably gone Brockermeyer. I think that was always going to fly under the radar. But like having a guy who you can really trust to play that center spot and be steady, and they've had success with that kind of older center, if you will. Like that type of player has been good for Miami. It was the only real question I think on that offensive line, and honestly, like I'm not going to put it past SJ Fatuli to go beat him out. I know that he's super talented. I wouldn't necessarily predict it, but at least if that happens, you feel really good about where you're at the center spot. But I think addressing that, not like wasting what I think can be, again, a top 3 offensive line in the country because you can't play the center spot, I think was a huge one. Because that's still the kind of the identity. And I think I'd like to see them almost go back to it more where they're just like beating teams up, controlling the ball. And like, I think that's a recipe that can be really effective for this Miami team because that offensive line and the running back room, probably the 2 strengths of this unit.
I mean, in 2023, that was working. That strategy was working very well. Take out the not taking a knee game and all that. But also, we lost 2 or 3 games because Tyler Van Dyke was thrown to the other team half the time. like we threw games away that we controlled completely on the ground. Like those games should have been wins. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off. I think that's what Mario Cristobal wants to do. Like they ran the ball very well in 2024. It's just you had the number 1 draft pick at quarterback. So it's like, well, throwing the football is working pretty dang good. We're scoring the most points in the country. Mm-hmm. I think you might see Miami get back to how Mario Cristobal wants this program to look, and that is we're going to dominate the line of scrimmage. We have a bunch of really good running backs, and we are going to grind teams down, which I think would help take a little pressure off the defense. I felt like Miami got into so many of these like high-scoring shootouts where whoever had the football last wins. Like you want to have a little less like stress on your Saturdays because I know we felt like
because even like you think of that Syracuse game, they could have just sucked. Like they got up early quickly on that Syracuse team, and again they just play a very fast style where Syracuse kind of get themselves back in relatively quickly. I mean, you just take more of those 6+ minute drives, which again, Miami certainly I would think is fully capable of doing pretty consistently because when you play along the offensive line the way they play and you have 2 running backs who are top tier players, I'd say like, yeah, you should be able to hammer teams and submit them.
Yeah.
That was really the only criticism I had of Shannon Dawson, but it was a big one after that game. It was like, yeah, the defense coughed it up, but you knew what you had in your defense at that point. I remember watching that game, Thanksgiving weekend, me and my dad watching the game, and we're yelling at the TV, run the ball. It's like 21-7, and we're like, run the ball. When it was 21-14, mind you, we're still ahead. I'm like, they scored those 2 touchdowns so fast on us. I'm like, if we don't keep our foot on the gas offensively, we're cooked.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. Yeah. So,
and again, you couldn't have taken the ball out of Cam Ward's hand. That would have been like malpractice because he was obviously dominant last year. But I do agree, like you still would have been nice to have a couple drives where you could just kind of sit on teams a little bit if you got up on them, and that just wasn't.
Well, like Dill, we're Michigan fans. Like that's what Michigan did even when they had J.J. McCarthy in 2023. And so like J.J. McCarthy got labeled this like game manager going into the NFL draft. Like not true. But Dill, our Saturdays were so stress-free most of the time because it's like, hey, we're going to get up. We're going to run the football, 8-minute drives that go 12 plays. And you're looking up at the third quarter, you're winning 21-3. And you're not in these, like, whoever has the football last wins the football game. I wouldn't mind seeing Miami get back to kind of that style, of which I think they can do in 2025.
Yeah. I thought of a good question to ask you guys. It wasn't on the agenda, but I'll ask anyway. I'm sure you guys talk about it a lot. With the transfer portal, I'll start with you, Dylan. The moving forward, because a conversation with Miami fans, I'm sure with Michigan fans like you guys too, it's like, yeah, portal's great for some free agency pickups, plugging up some holes, but we'd like to not rely on it so much. The conversation's always, hey, if we could just take 7 to 10 guys every year, that would be great. But it's like, it's not always that simple, because what if you had, like Miami, you had a great year, a lot of guys just went to the NFL. You got to replace them. Whereas before you had like, oh, this is going to be kind of a rebuilding year. Now you don't have those anymore. Now you retool and you're right back at it. So, like, do you think that that's possible for teams?
I think it's a little bit position group to position group. Like, I'm more or less comfortable taking more transfers at, like, let's say wide receiver than I am the offensive line. And Miami doesn't take transfers on the offensive line for the most part because they're doing a really good job recruiting it, retaining it, and developing it. So it's like, to me, I look, the offensive line, when you're a team that's taken 3+ starters a year on that unit, I think it's a real problem. I think, again, Miami was in a position where I don't think they took a ton of like starters from the transfer portal, aside from the secondary, which was like just such a glaring weakness. I don't think you had any real choice. Like that was a little bit of a unique situation, I'd say, they put themselves in. But I don't know that I don't look at Miami as anything close to like what an Ole Miss is. Where Ole Miss, it's like they're probably replacing over half of their team. No, well over half, I should say. Probably close to 3/4 of their entire team starting production in the portal each year. I think you probably want to be in that 20-25%. And that's kind of like a loose number, but I think that's a good number because you do want to use it. And like, again, when you can get a guy like James Brockermeyer, I think you really should be going out and adding him because I think he brings a lot to that team.
Yeah.
I think you don't want to be Florida State though. You want to be very, very careful. And I think with what the situation you just kind of described was like exactly what happened with Florida State 12 months ago, where, they had a really good year in 2023. believe it was 12 NFL draft picks, tried to retool it in the portal, fell apart in 2024. Now, the caveat there is Florida State does not recruit the high school ranks nearly as good as they need to. And they don't develop that high school talent either. You go back and look at their recruiting rankings, it is a disaster. I mean, they miss on pretty much every guy they pulled out of high school the last couple of years. When you're a team like Miami that does a good job, like they build their roster at the high school ranks, there ain't no question about it. And then we're going to supplement it with like certain needs that we have each offseason. Yeah, I think that's personally the route to go when you're trying to build a national championship caliber program is, hey, the bulk of your roster, it was recruited out of high school, developed in the program. But every single year, you're going to have certain positions where it's like, hey, we missed on this kid out of high school. We need a plug and play guy. Well, now you can utilize the transfer portal to kind of fill in the cracks of your roster on a year-to-year basis.
Yeah, and I think if you keep that number at like the number you quote need to add low, I think you can just get higher caliber players, which I think Miami is for the most part. Like the secondary guys they brought in, I'd say were high caliber players. Like Ethan O'Connor, big time. Poyser, big time. Xavier Lucas, really big time upside, obviously. So I look again, they didn't bring in a ton of like guys who it's like, oh, what are you bringing that guy in for? There is no shot he's going to play on this team, or if he does, like that's not ideal. I don't think there are a ton of those ads. Maybe a little bit at the wide receiver part side, in my opinion. But like,
wait, who? Who do you think's ain't going to play on Miami from the wide receivers?
I thought I didn't know that they need to add as many guys in the spring as again. I was a little bit on the camp. I was very comfortable just rocking with.
That's crazy. They had you're half their two deep with freshmen.
Keelan Marion, I'm not convinced is going to play a ton for Miami. He's not been a particularly productive player from those BYU days. He's been there for a very long time.
All right, we don't want to turn this into a brotherly fight right now. My take here is, Dill, you're bringing Keelan Marion to make sure you have a guy that you know can play. Ideally, for Miami fans, like JoJo Trader beats him out clearly. But like you don't want to be in a position where it's like in our two deep that we're going into 2025, we got 3 true freshmen. And then another 2 guys in JoJo Trader and Ray Joseph that are guys that haven't played a ton, redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore. Like you just couldn't be that inexperienced going into 2025. You needed to add some experience. And like I think like what John said, hey, kind of ideally Malachi Tony wins the job because then you know he's a stud, but you're at least making sure
that's fair.
that you have that these young kids are ready to play as opposed to, hey, we ain't got any other options. So we got to play a 17-year-old in 2025.
Yeah, competition is so important. And it was kind of the there were a lot of things that contributed to the downfall of Miami 18 to 20 years ago. The biggest one being the lack of funding, but one of them was, recruiting, bringing in enough guys to come in and compete. Larry Coker, who was the coach at the time, was like mid-2000s already. He had his championship team, and then it kind of declined after that. It was a lot of recruit a stud 5-star wide receiver, and then it's like, yeah, you're my guy, not bringing in any veterans, not bringing in enough numbers to compete. Yeah. So I think that was part of our downfall. I agree, bringing in the veterans. It's first of all, depth. If somebody gets hurt, okay, great. Then, the Keelan Marion can step in and be a nice deep threat maybe. Mainly our kick returning. I know that's been a gripe for Miami fans for 15 years. Our kick returning has been bad for the most part, so
and do that.
You had to add there. He's a weapon in the return game, and yeah, he could be a nice deep threat off the bench, a rotational guy. I don't think he's going to command 20, 30 snaps a game or anything like that. In fact, on the word is that on the outside, if anybody's going to get a lot of snaps of the newcomers, it might be Joshua Moore, who's a true freshman. Now you start against Notre Dame and then Florida a couple weeks later, so it's it's you're throwing them to the wolves, but you see if they can sink or swim,
Yeah. And if they can't, if they're not quite ready, you have guys that like Tony Johnson or Keelan Marion that can give you solid reps. I guess that's my take on it. My brother and I have gone back and forth on this situation for the last couple of days.
It's a weird thing because and I'll end with this. Mario, when he sees, I think you alluded to it earlier, when he sees a problem, when he has a chance to kind of sit back in the offseason, okay, what was an issue? Let me address it right now. One of those issues is while receivers were very productive, Xavier, Jacoby George, and forgetting who the other one was.
Isaiah Horton.
Isaiah Horton.
Yeah.
All three very productive. But guess what? Name me one that had like game-breaking speed. None of them.
Yeah.
We don't have that speed, that top-tier speed that you should have at Miami. At least like one or two burners on the edge. Now, Tony Johnson's got some quickness. He's got some speed. Keelan Marion's got some speed. Some new guy, JoJo Trader's got some speed. So now they're starting to get a little faster. So I think that's something, in addition to somebody with snaps, with game experience, is like, hey, who can I bring that could take the top off the defense a little bit? I think that's why they went after the guys they went after.
Yeah, very fair.
Yeah. So yeah, we just hit 8:30. It's we got 43 in the chat right now. Thank you guys in the chat for chiming in. Thank you guys for coming on. And and before I let you guys go, I'll give you guys a chance to make like your way too early prediction because it's only May. But I'll start with you, Jay, then go to you, Dylan. What is your outlook for this Miami team? How do they finish?
I'm gonna go 10-2, and with the Notre Dame and Florida out of conference, Miami squeaks into the playoffs. And here's what's holding me back for the ACC championship is I really like Clemson too. And like Dill said at the top, it's like the two clear picks in the ACC are Clemson and Miami. But man, Clemson has so much returning production, a very good defensive line. I'll go 10-2, getting into the college football playoffs, maybe going down to Clemson in the ACC championship.
Yeah, I'd probably go something. I'd probably be something in the 10-2 neighborhood as well. Clemson, to me, I love the on paper game, but they've been another team that I feel like we have been saying this a little bit, like for the past couple of years, where it's like, this is a really good team. This team better, like, has their offensive line kicked it up to a gear where I think they need to be? Probably not. And even last year, like, they were a better team than the amount of losses they had. I like them losing to Louisville in the way they lost, where they kind of just gotten the doors beat off them pretty bad. Like, Miami lost games and, like, again, inexcusable, but like, I kind of get it. It was just, there was one glaring problem that was pretty consistent throughout. Clemson would have issue. Like, their offensive line, I don't think was good enough at times. So Clemson, I feel like I want to believe, because you probably got 2 top 5 picks on that defensive line. You got really good wide receivers for the first time since like the days of DeAndre Hopkins and Sammy Watkins, but they're still a team that for the last 5 years has been pretty steadily underperforming. It's hard to explain, in my opinion. I know they've won the ACC, and Davos tried to explain away maybe the lack of dominance, but it's not been a team that takes the field and pounds teams like they used to. Miami is still, like, when they're playing really well, they're blowing the doors off teams pretty thoroughly. And if their defense just takes a marginal step, I can't pick that game yet, because I'll still need to, like, see both of them. I'll need to, like, is Miami's defense going to be well improved, or is Clemson just going to play up to their potential?
So what's your prediction here?
I'd probably lean Clemson, but I'm not as convinced about Clemson as you, because Clemson's let me down for 3 straight years.
Fair enough.
In terms of, like, predicting them to be really good, and they've just been heavily not very good. No, they've been good, but like just not dominant, not really bordering on that elite level.
Yeah, I'll say this about Clemson. They're not what they were in like 2016, 2017. I mean, there was one year they literally had a first rounder like all across the D line. They had 4 starting on the D line. Yeah. I think that was the year we played them actually in the ACC title. Yeah,
it's like they kind of had that unit last year, and they played really poorly in a lot of games. It's like that Louisville team ran up and down them like Swiss cheese. It's hard to comprehend for me for Clemson. Like, can I really buy into them as like a national championship threat? I mean, I still probably got to see it from Miami, because if they don't take that step, I think the questions start to get a little louder for Mario. Like, if they have another 8-4, 9-3 season, I mean, he's going to keep his job for sure. But I do think that you start to get into like, well, when are we going to kind of break through? Because now it's his team. He's had enough time. I think this is a big year for him. I think there's a lot of like year 3, year 4 coaches who have huge years. He certainly has a huge one, because they have enough talent to be really good. And if they lose like 2 or 3 of those like absolute gross ones, I think that's a problem.
I agree. And I will say this. We've had the most talented team on paper in, dating back to when the Coastal Division was a thing. We've had the most talented team in the Coastal Division, like most of those 20 years, I would say. Not necessarily the most talented team breaks through and gets to the title game. So it's like, Mario's got his guys in there. It's his year 4. I'm like, okay.
And the program's given him what he needs. Like they have given him the resources and the firepower to win ACC titles at least and be kind of a perennial playoff team. So he's going to make it happen now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There is no excuse you can really make, honestly, outside of like a devastating injury to like someone key. But like even that, like you got the guys. Like just get it done already. That's how we're feeling at this point. Yeah. But anyways, guys, thank you again for being on. Really appreciate it. It was fun hanging out with you guys, talking some Canes. I will hope to have you guys back on again soon, maybe sometime before the season starts. And please, before I go, let the people know where they can find you. Maybe those who are not too familiar with you guys, let them know where they can find your content.
ROC Boys Football on YouTube. Best way to find us.
All right. Sounds good. Greg Bush, again, thank you for linking this up. Greg, my dude. So everyone, take care. Have a great night. And as always, go Canes. Have a good night, everybody.